Hi everyone, my name is Darlene Rondo and I'm the Vice President Best Practices for Leonardo's Online Merchandising Group, and I'm going to be your host for today's event. Welcome to everyone who is on the call with us. A few housekeeping items before we begin. First, we're going to be recording today's event, and afterwards we'll send you a thank you for joining us email with a link to the recording. You also have a questions dialog box in your GoToMeeting panel. I see some of you have already found it. So as we move through our discussion today, please send in your questions and we'll address them throughout the webinar as well as at the end. So please locate the questions dialog box and start talking to us. We're also going to be tweeting throughout today's discussion. You can join in the conversation by using the hashtag LeoWebinar. Now I'd like to introduce our very special guest for today's discussion. First, I'd like to introduce Sarah Kennedy Ellis, who is the VP of Global Marketing and Portfolio Strategy for Sabr's fastest growing business, providing distribution, operations, and guest experience technology to hotels around the globe. Sarah's worked in travel for nearly a decade in a variety of strategy, marketing, and product leadership roles, including her most recent as Managing Director of Sabre Labs, where she rebuilt Sabre's emerging technology incubator and worked across the entire industry with the world's largest airlines, hotels, and online travel companies. Sarah's a well-known speaker on guest experience and loyalty programs, and currently sits on the board of HSMAI, as well as Tech Fort Worth, a startup incubator based in North Texas. She holds a BBA from Baylor University and an MBA from the University of Texas in Dallas. I'm also pleased to introduce Allison Ladley Gibson. Allison is the innkeeper at Kitchen Kettle Village. This charming property is located in Lancaster City, Pennsylvania, and it consists of 17 guest houses and apartments and is an ideal home away from home for those looking for an escape to the countryside. Allison joined the family business as an innkeeper in mid-2016 after 13 years working as an environmental field educator in Maryland. And she jumped on board cleaning rooms, developing web content, greeting guests, and sharing her passion for an amazing guest experience at the Inn at Kitchen Kettle. And her hard work is really paying off. The Inn at Kitchen Kettle has a 5-star rating on TripAdvisor and is ranked in the top 1% of romantic hotels in the village, according to TrustYou. Today, Allison is going to share her own personal experience that she has had creating content for her website and what she's learned along the way to help other hoteliers. So welcome, Allison. As we do with all of our webinars, we start with a poll, and we'd like everyone in the audience to weigh in. And this poll is, where are you located? So where in the world are you? Are you in North America? Are you in Europe, Middle East, or Africa, Asia Pacific, or Latin America? And by selecting this, it just helps us understand where you're coming from and what issues, because people in different parts of the world may have different challenges. And so looks like by and large the majority of our audience is from North America, 63%. So thanks everybody. EMEA right after that at 32%. There are a few people from Asia Pacific and Latin America. So thanks everybody for weighing in. We do appreciate that. We have another poll that I'm going to launch, and this is a question. When was the last time you updated your website content? Was it in the last 3 months, the last 6 months, or more than 12 months ago? Again, this will help us give us some context to where you're coming from and what you're experiencing in terms of content. So, wow. Looks like 75% of you have updated your website content within the last 3 months. Yay, good for you. Happy to see that. And then about 13% within the last 6 months, and then another 10% more than 12 months ago. So great, thank you. I'm going to close that poll, and just one more poll before we get started. And that is, what content would you like to improve? Do you want to improve your photos and videos? Would you like to improve the copy and the text on your website? Would you like to update captions and short descriptions for your images? Or do you need to update just about everything on your website? So I'm surprised. So like 65% of you are saying everything needs to be updated. Well, we're going to talk about that today, and we're going to hear how Sarah and how Allison have managed that. So again, I'm going to close this poll, and we are going to get started with our presentation. So I'm going to move to the next slide, and I'm just going to set up the conversation for today's discussion. And this topic actually was inspired by you, our audience, from the feedback that you provided us late last year. And many of you indicated that you wanted to learn more about content marketing and how to use this content effectively on your website to drive more direct bookings. By now, I think everyone appreciates the fact that website content is critical to ranking in Google search results. According to a study by TrustYou in 2016, 91% of travelers turn to search engines when they're looking for a place to stay, 81% using Google specifically. And you're probably also familiar with Google's summarized display of hotel results that show up in organic search results. And you can see an example here on this slide. TrustYou tested how consumers interact with the summarized display and what decision variables are used when selecting a hotel. Numerous variables were given alongside the hotel listing, as you can see. So you have the price, the review score, star ratings, and images. And then using click-through data, what they did was they tracked where consumers clicked to next from this summarized display in order to find more information. While 32% of travelers zoomed in on the map, the majority were more likely to click on one of the hotel listings. And then from there, the majority of travelers clicked through directly to the hotel's website. This suggests that your website is the most trusted source for information about your property, and people will choose to visit it first before they consider what channel to book through. So this is a real opportunity through content to win the booking. There's a great article from Kissmetrics that talks about how to convert a window shopper into a customer, and they set it up using the analogy of a bakery, and I think their advice is also really relevant to hotels as well. So it's where you can turn visitors into customers, or in this case, guests. So people come to your website because they're interested in what you have to offer. And they may be looking for a hotel for an upcoming trip and gathering more information to make a purchase decision, or they may just be window shopping at this point, considering all the options for when they decide to travel. Either way, they rarely end up on your site just by chance, right? Something led them there, a desire, a need, a curiosity. And the role of your content is to help answer their questions and build trust and credibility. But being a digital storefront comes with some challenges. The most obvious is that travel shoppers can't physically visit your property before making a booking. They can't see your guest rooms or meet your staff or swim in your pool or taste the food in your restaurant. But what they can do is look through your storefront window, aka your hotel website. So converting these window shoppers is really all about looks, perception, desire, and emotion that draws them in closer. Website design plays a huge part in this, but so does content. Your website content is your opportunity to greet visitors warmly and make them feel welcome, even if they're just browsing. So at this point, make a good impression with words that generate positive feelings about the property. Travel shoppers are going to remember that, and they'll remember you when it's time to book. Be helpful and informative through your content, because travel shoppers think favorably of hotels that actually care about their best interests and want them to have a satisfying trip. And then provide travel tips, restaurant recommendations, directions to prominent landmarks, discounts to local attractions. All these things are really helpful to your ideal guest. And this is something that OTAs simply cannot do. They can't compete on this because they don't provide content like this on their sites. They don't have that intimate knowledge of the property and what's in and around it. So they're not able to make the same kind of emotional connection that you can. So if you can do this right and cinch the deal with an offer to book direct, then you've really mastered the art of content marketing and how to use it to your advantage to win more bookings. There's a really good example of this, the Hotel Kleber in Paris. Visitors to their website are greeted by colorful and visual homepage images showcasing their beautifully renovated guest rooms. And the description on their homepage immediately reveals where they're located and why travel shoppers should book directly with them. And this helpful information is repeated throughout their website so that when people click through to the guest room, special offers, or the gallery, they're reminded of why they should book directly with the property. And what I really love about the Kleber's website is the small opportunities that they use to convey their personality and values. So in the gallery, for example, they use creative captions and short descriptions that are helpful and persuasive. So you can see up top, this isn't just a double room, but it's a deluxe room with a jacuzzi and free internet. And the short description of this photo gives us an idea of who this classic single room is best suited for. In this case, it's perfect for business travelers that want to feel at home. And then they also have a virtual tour of the property, which is great because we know that people who view a listing with a virtual tour are twice as likely to make a reservation there. They also provide helpful information on local attractions, landmarks, and shopping on their Paris experience page. And as well, they include directions for how to get to the hotel using a variety of transportation options. And based on their website content, travel shoppers can see that this is a friendly hotel with great attention to detail and a strong value proposition to book direct. We really hold this kind of a website out as a perfect 10, and you're also going to see another one when Allison gets ready to talk about her property, and I know Sarah is going to talk and give us some more examples as well. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Sarah to discuss the power of website content in more detail. So Sarah, I'm going to hand you controls now.
Great.
And there you go. You should be in control of the board.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Darlene. Appreciate it. And actually, let me make sure I've got, do I have the ability to switch slides?
I think you do, yeah. There you go.
Got it. Okay. Sorry, I'm skipping ahead. All right, so thank you guys again for spending some time with us today. I'm excited to share a little bit about how a lot of the hotels that we serve at Sabre are really thinking about leveraging content in how they engage with guests across the entire guest journey, but also even more broadly when we think about guests as travelers and then think about travelers as consumers and how trends that are happening and how they behave and leverage technology can really be utilized to help both inspire them as well as help drive conversion and enable them to purchase more seamlessly the things they're intending to or most desire intrinsically to purchase. So as I mentioned, we do believe at Sabre really that true hospitality transcends that entire journey. It isn't just about the guest experience because almost every guest has some form of transportation they took, whether ground or air, maybe walking, to get to wherever your property may be. And at Sabre, we have a broad portfolio. I won't spend a lot of time here, but we do a lot of different things. And the reason this is relevant is because we have insight and we study a lot about how guests interact both with technology as well as how they interact in the offline environment with staff at a hotel across all of the solutions that we provide that you can see here. And we do it for many different brands, everything from limited service, maybe economy brands, to high-end luxury, and even really large chains, the largest in the world, Wyndham. And that gives us a little bit broader perspective I think about how everyone's using content, and it's being used in very different ways, especially limited service. The key driver and a decision-making factor may be location for a guest, whereas in the luxury space, it may be the imagery of a pool, quite literally. So there's a lot you can do, but it all really needs to focus on the same trends, or at least leverage and pull insights that can inform how your property can take content and use it in a more meaningful way based on these trends from consumers. So this stat keeps changing. Everyone reports on it differently, and I love seeing the drastic differences in this. So everything from 70 touches per day is where some people are reporting it, to as high as 3,000. I think the thing we can all agree on, whether or not that number is true, I think most likely we all freak out a little bit if our phone is not within reach, and have a sense of anxiety or concern no matter how often we're touching it. And it's there for us as a resource, and maybe the most dependable and the resource we rely on the most throughout any given day for every type of task we want to perform, whether that be researching a trip, sending an email, creating a presentation. We do everything on our devices these days, and they're more critical than ever, which is why it's more important for us than ever to understand how consumers are using it, how we can start to leverage it more effectively. And then just based on some data that we have, so we have about between 15,000 20,000 hotels that use different parts of our direct booking solutions, like our Synexus booking engine. And through a lot of the data that we have in aggregate across all of those properties and chains, we're learning a lot about millennials. And there's a lot of reporting out there on where millennial, both revenue contribution as well as shopping behavior is contributing to the travel industry, but it's often reported about the airline space without telling you. They just say travel. But this is specific to hotels, and it's really fascinating because it's actually happening at a faster rate. Millennials are taking over the lion's share of the shopping behavior in the hospitality space in the direct channel at a faster rate than any other generation, and also in any other segment of travel. So what our trends are showing us are that it's going to be, by 2018, about 50% of every type of brand. So that means everyone from the chains or the sub-brands that are targeting millennials intentionally, that may be closer to 60 to 70%, as well as those that may actually not be, but there's some connection. They're still being sought out by millennials that are today around 30% to 35%, and that's about the lowest we see in terms of shopping share. It just means, I think, for us as we look at it, to maybe oversimplify, but we do know, though, that they are less patient. They are definitely, though, more interested in the direct channel than probably most people or analysts predicted they would be. I think a lot of people assumed millennials go straight to an OTA or go, wherever, maybe whether it's Google Hotels, maybe it's a lot of different channels where they're really comfortable. But the reality is they value connection with your brand more than any other generation in recent history, certainly in the digital ecosystem and the landscape we operate in today. And they want to know what your brand is, who you are in your direct channel. They want to give you a chance, but they will be faster to judge you once they are in that channel. But the point is they're going to give you a chance, and that's really exciting for us to capitalize on.
Sarah, we have a question from the audience. Anthony wants to know, why do you think that is? Why do you think their behavior is so different?
Yeah, I'm not sure why it's different than other generations. I mean, we're operating in a different era where, hotels for Generation X didn't necessarily have a digital presence. They were just kind of coming on the scene. But I do think it's because people, especially millennials, they trust themselves as a research tool better than any online travel tool possibly could, because they know how efficient they are, and they feel like they can navigate the digital environment with ease. And so I think shopping is incredibly easy for them, and so why not get more information and make sure they can be in control of the decision? I think it's a bit of a control thing, but I think it's also them really wanting to know who your brand is and whether or not that resonates with them, not just what's filtered through another channel necessarily. Both are important to them.
Yeah, I've also heard that they have an incredible what's termed the BS sensor, right? And so
they're looking for authenticity.
Right? They're distrustful of advertising and of sort of traditional marketing. And so, to your point, they're going to rely on themselves and their friends,
Yeah.
and in fact, strangers we see, right? They hold reviews in high regard and over feedback from brands. So it's interesting to watch how that evolves.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's a great lead in because this point I think is one of the most important when we think about at least visual content, that 90% of all the information processed by our brains is visual, right? So from the sense of whether it's touch, smell, hearing, that's the 10%, and we have visual information being processed at a rapid rate. And you can see here that just as general humans are actually processing images 60,000 times faster than text. And that just makes it an even more powerful medium to use to connect directly with your guests. And it's part of why we're seeing trends I don't have on a slide here, but just other trends across social channels where just visual sharing has exploded. And Facebook's now, as of this year, up to, I think, 300 million daily photos being uploaded. Snapchat is 2.5 billion posts a day. Instagram, 91% of the posts are pictures. Interestingly, 14% of people are so addicted to the pictures they check Instagram while driving an automobile. And the really exciting thing, though, to see is actually Instagram. It's been a little frustrating for brands, I think, to figure out how to leverage Instagram because of some of how they've designed purely with the user in mind for a very long time, and they've taken their time in figuring out what the best execution or delivery mechanism is to still serve that user, but while enabling brands to connect with that user in a more meaningful and directly measurable way. And so you see, I think some of you probably have already used the photo carousel feature they just launched. You can put up to 10 photos in one Instagram post. So you can tell a visual story that doesn't take up multiple streams of the feed, but actually happens in that singular horizontal interface. And you can do that with video as well. So I can't wait to see what a lot of the brands, maybe many of you out there, do to experiment with that new medium. I think it's really exciting. So images are all over the place. I think we've certainly confirmed that, but those images are often that catalyst. They are the catalyst for travelers to dream, or they are the catalyst for travelers to make a quick, fast decision. And maybe that's a business traveler who that's all they're looking for is one piece of information or data based on how they choose a hotel to make a choice, or others are looking for maybe more leisure-focused, more inspirational content that could be relevant to them in their situation. And yet we have a broken process for booking, right? We send them through these visually rich sites and inspire them and get them so excited about their trip, and then we shuttle them over to what may or may not be a similar experience. And oftentimes there's degradation of the experience if there isn't seamless design and interactivity across the booking engine and the site. And it's, I don't even know why we still refer to it as two separate things, because it is all one. It's just your digital touch point and direct digital experience with guests, whether or not they're researching or booking at that time. And there's a lot of trends to consider. I'll kind of breeze through these, but the leading expectations that our guests and our consumers generally have is being driven by every other industry and even other supplier types within our own. And I think the great news is hospitality has been more focused than any entity in all of the travel industry on service for a very, very long time, and they do that flawlessly in an offline context. But we have not as much been doing the same in keeping up digitally. And so there's a lot of work that has to be done to keep up and have the data be actionable in real time across every touch point with a guest, and also to enable staff to use those similar systems on the back end to have an offline personalized experience with that guest. We also have been targeting personas versus individuals. People want to be spoken to like an individual, not as a general subtype or stereotyped group. I think we all know that. And then articulation versus revelation of preferences. We still are asking people to check boxes, and then that's it. And then I'm not sure, some may claim they have more science behind it than others and how they apply that to a rules engine or a personalization engine. But the reality is we're not doing even close to enough if that's all we do, even if we do that part well. We need to be revealing to people what they actually desire based on the intelligence we have across thousands and maybe millions of travelers in some of your cases in a given year.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll skip through just a few quick examples that I get excited about, because we spend a lot of our time experimenting and looking at how do we get this right in real life. And we've worked with a lot of different properties on how they can create more visually rich and engaging imagery on their site, because that's the most important thing. But also we've started to experiment with how you can take, basically believe what your travelers are telling you because they're telling the truth. And if they're clicking on an image or they're diving deeper, that's something that generated a level of interest from them that kind of incited or was the incentive for them to take that action. So we should collect that as data, and we should believe them when they're telling us they're interested in that. And then take the context from that and give them more relevant data as a result versus them just finding their own way through the past. So why can't you book a specific room? If this is the image that inspires me in terms of a room, why can't I click directly there to book exactly the room that will look like that upon arrival, instead of being dropped into kind of a rate pattern or a different series of rooms that I've then got to go find and match to this and hope that it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And that works today even in the economy space. So when you think about, I mentioned before, sometimes location is a primary driver, but sometimes just a clean room that you're going to feel comfortable in is just as important as a super high-end luxury 5-star hotel. This imagery has just of an emotional appeal to a business traveler looking for cleanliness as their top priority, as a luxury traveler in a leisure context using a similar solution with a different type of content. And so as I mentioned, the travelers, the photos actually inspire them to ask what if. It does the same thing to us, and we're always asking what if, and we're always experimenting. We enjoy failing because it means we've learned something and the product will be better for it. But we have been constantly asking this question of how can we merge this point of inspiration with the point of sale? And you saw a little bit of it there in those examples, but bringing the data up to the forefront, bringing rates, availability, inventory, discontinuing this cold separation of the booking path from the digital experience and actually bringing that to the surface, bringing it to the exact point of greatest inspiration for a guest that's shopping on your site. And we've done a lot of experimentation with Viceroy. You can see this live on many of their sites. But when you dig a little deeper, what we learned and we're researching with them was a lot of how people are behaving and interacting, even where there's visually rich content, what is still drawing them in and where are they spending their time. And we saw that 45% of them were spending a great deal of time in these areas, and we invested in an in-context solution that I'll show you an example of in a second that really brought to life the photo gallery and did what I mentioned earlier, which is kind of bring all of that data to the forefront where that guest is most greatly inspired. But that leaves 55%, right? So we've been doing a ton of really fun experimentation in completely new categories that, whether it be spa, meeting rooms, and events, even cabanas. Experimentation there is also still predicated on those fundamentals around content and how it can drive conversion. And so I'll show you a few examples. We've been doing it with meeting rooms and basically selecting diagrams, and in some scenarios meeting room imagery is more important than the text itself. But letting people know the actual room setup and event planner, that content is critical, right? That's a lot of how you can know, or at least up front, determine whether or not a room or a space will work for you, has to do with the layout and how many people can fit in. So putting the right data up front in a booking context like this is critical. And then this is actually a live. I would encourage you to go test this out. It's kind of fun. I booked my tea time the other day, actually, that I then had to cancel. But it was so easy. I had booked it and then didn't realize it. But we launched recently a golf booking engine for Trump hotels, and we have other customers that are now experimenting with this. Is how can you start to, again, it's anything is inventory across a property, and so for full service properties, they may have a golf course, and tea times are actually a pretty simple thing to book. It's pretty binary. It's either available or it's not, and you're not as much having to manage true assets as you are a time slot. And so it's just a different context to then present still data in a very simple and seamless way. And while there's no imagery here, there is in other parts of this. The visuals here that are important and the content is how simple it is, because this is the easiest thing in the world to book, and I encourage you to go play around with it because it's kind of fun.
It kind of reminds me of just making a restaurant reservation.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it is. And we're doing also experimentation with what can be the lowest threshold or the lowest set of obstacles that you can put in front of someone who has interest or intent. And we challenge our customers on this a lot. Is, do you really need all of these data fields in the checkout path? Do you really have in maybe the context of a golf course, is it critical for you to take and collect a cancellation fee upon cancellation which, in many cases, obviously OpenTable does not do for restaurants. But do we need
Right.
that here? And so we can transact here or not and hold money or not. And that's just another element of this that's great because it's just helping hotels monetize different parts of their property but automate how that is booked.
Absolutely.
Experimenting with spa as well, you can imagine it's kind of the same as the others here, but it's just taking that time-based inventory. Spa is arguably the most complex thing you could possibly book because of all the dimensions at play, as all of you know who work in a full service or have in a full service property. But whether it's male or female technician, whether it's the time that you have, whether people are working that day or not, and all of the labor scheduling around that, it's really highly complex. And much more so even arguably than a room. And yet, there's some people doing it out there very well. But how can we start to leverage those that have done it well, maybe the services that are out there with a much more visually rich front end that can help sell and merchandise more elements of the spa experience? Because that's one where that imagery can have a powerful impact, but most of it's not booked digitally today, so there's no opportunities or few opportunities to merchandise digitally for that type of inventory.
Yeah.
So this is just an example of the photo gallery I mentioned. I'll wrap up with just another example that's live with Mandarin Oriental, and it's, again, just making sure that you don't make your travelers do more work than they have to, right? If someone is coming to your site and they're clicking on a family offer, they've told you that they likely have an interest. They at least probably have a family. I can't imagine why they would not, but you could take a very educated guess and be right most of the time that they do. So we need to take what they're telling us and present back data and imagery and content that's relevant. So when they click on that photo, why wouldn't you take an educated guess that's probably going to be right 80% of the time? But that's better than forcing them to continue to tell you what they need and really have a strong connection or stronger connection to convert within that 80% that it applied to. So this just pulls up for them when they click just literally on the photo itself of the family offer. It automatically pulls up the calendar and the packaging options that are available for a family. And then once you select dates, it then takes you into different room types. So it starts with, whether it's the policy, whether it's, the room categories that it filters down to, whether it's the dates, whether it's the rates, all of that can be filtered out up front and then take them to choose a room based on their specific needs as a family, and just reduce the number of clicks it takes to get through that process. So just to wrap up, just kind of three a little more practical, maybe in tactical tips that I always like to just ask questions honestly to hoteliers about and how they're addressing them, but also study our data to learn and get smarter about how we think about the smaller things we can do more practically in the near term. And I think it always comes back to optimizing, studying the data that you have and optimizing where the trends lead you. And I think a surgical focus on the small one or two things you can do, such as if it is based on location, whether it's based on luxury and inspiration around the visuals for a luxury property or leisure trip or for speed and efficiency, putting if you have a limited service property and you have 10 chains in one city, location might be the biggest factor at a chain level, and you maybe should start with the map-based view. That may be the way that your booking process should flow. It maybe shouldn't come at the end or after they've selected other elements. And being able to make it interactive and have that content come to life based on what your buyers need or are interested in most is critical. And then studying just your shopping cart and whatever your process there is. Some of you may not have a cart per se, but that last step, when they've already told you they're willing to input customer information, when they're at the page and they've taken the step to go to that page, and then they bail out of that page somewhere, they abandon that purchase, surgically study that data, whether you have an agency or a partner or you have it yourself. I highly and strongly encourage you to leverage the tools at your disposal to see surgically where those drop-offs are happening. What small tweaks can you make here and there? How much easier can you make a simple step of entering a phone number or auto-filling things, or maybe taking that educated guess. If they enter their name once, you go ahead and auto-populate it in that second set of fields and hope that it's right, and if it's not, they'll probably at least appreciate the fact that you tried to save them some time. The second is don't make them do that work twice, and it points back to that point, but believe them when they tell you who they are and start to target based on that because more often than not you will benefit from it. And I would say that at the end of the day, when you think about the closer the decision is to, and the closer the ability for them to take an action is to that point of inspiration, what we've been talking about here, the much more likely you are to convert. And I know that's easy to say, but there are big and small ways for you to do that throughout your site, throughout your digital experience, and throughout even your offline interactions with guests on property. So I would strongly encourage you to think about what that could mean for you, and hopefully this has been helpful. So I'll pause there and hand it back over to Darlene.
No, it's been amazing, Sarah. And I think those practical tips that you gave at the end, I know our audience particularly loves that because, everybody's super busy. There's lots of excellent strategies out there. But the message you gave to our audience today, I think, is practical and very helpful. There was a question that came in while you were talking from Lisa. And it coincides with our topic today, but because you have a very global view of hospitality, I thought this would be a good question for you at this point. And so Lisa's asking, what do you feel is going to be the biggest disruptor in terms of digital hotel landscapes in the next couple of years? So maybe like the next 2 years. What do you think that might be?
Such a broad question. So I'll answer this from a digital perspective. I do think it's going to be in the investments, honestly, that are finally being made in what I sometimes refer to as the less sexy part of the infrastructure behind the scenes for hospitality, but the critical fundamentals that really don't exist yet that enable the personalization. And as we talk about a lot of this, having more than just what they tell us on the site. I mentioned, people are clicking on family, they're clicking on other things, they're telling us things all along the way, they're dropping little breadcrumbs and nuggets. It's going to be critical, and I think the most disruptive in a positive way for hotels especially is getting the infrastructure in place to know more about them out of the gate, and to have a core capability and a just center of excellence for every chain that can invest in it around just data intelligence and being able to action that and integrate a profile system that's modular across all of your applications. And I think there's going to be no single provider of every single product that you need or technology that you need, because everybody has a different set of requirements for what best in class are, I think. But I think we've got to figure out that base layer that doesn't exist and make sure we are all collaborating as an industry, and that you're pushing, I think, as hotels, the technology partners to be seamless in terms of how we integrate to make sure that your guests can have the best experience possible. And that's not happened really to date, and I think that can be and it will be the most disruptive thing, because all of a sudden you have much more data than any other channel does about your guests, and you can have a truly differentiated and extremely personalized interaction and experience with them on your direct site, and you can keep them there and convert them there as a result. So I think for at least your individual businesses, I think that's most likely going to be the biggest disruptor, if we can pull it off. So
can't wait, right? Yeah. It'd be nice if in the hotel space, if we had a similar experience to an Amazon experience.
Right.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Sarah. Excellent stuff. And now I am, if I can get, there we go. And here is Allison Ladley Gibson, and I'm going to turn this over to Allison. And Allison is going to talk about, as I said up front, about her experience with the Inn at Kitchen Kettle. And so, Allison, over to you.
Thanks, Darlene. I am really happy to be here and be able to share some of our success with the Inn at Kitchen Kettle and the website and how Visly has really helped us do that. So I just took the first part of the text of our site and wanted to focus on the images, because like Sarah said, the images are a huge piece of how our site has been successful. But some of the background about the Inn itself is we have 17 rooms that are all here at Kitchen Kettle Village. They are interspersed throughout the village. There's not one that looks like another, which is a great way to bring in new people. There are some who always go to the same place and others who want to try every different room. So we have a lot of fun with making those unique rooms something that our guests want to come back to and keep exploring. They're all part of Kitchen Kettle Village. So the pictures that you see there are a piece of the experience that guests can have when they come to the village. But it's in a different location, and that location is part of what we are able to offer to our guests. And if I can go to the next slide. We're in Lancaster County, which is in Pennsylvania, south central Pennsylvania. It's an easy drive to get to some of the major cities like New York, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia. Some of our guests will take the train and hop in an Uber or a taxi to get here from Philadelphia, and some really like the drive to get to that simple lifestyle, to get to the slower pace and get out of the city. And they do it for a night, they'll do it for a week and a half. It really depends. But Lancaster County we're in the heart of it. We're in the middle of farmland. We have quilts like you can see behind me. It's a great way to get away for a lot of people, but it's also a place for locals that can come and still have that getaway, but all here as part of Lancaster County. So the Inn is part of Kitchen Kettle Village, and Kitchen Kettle is a family business. It was started in 1954 by my grandparents, Bob and Pat Burnley. I've got their book right here, so that story is a big part of everything. And it started with a jam and relish kitchen in their garage, and has now expanded to 42 shops and 2 great restaurants. We have probably over 1 million visitors every year. We have music, live music. We have guests coming from all over the world. We have festivals. There's always something going on, and there's lots of busy things. There's lots of things to explore, things that are new all the time. And so it's almost new. We're getting past that new phase of having lodging. So people that come to shop, they say, you can sleep over. And so we're one of hundreds of places in Lancaster County that you can sleep over. But the fact that we're within the village is a real selling point for us. And so when we look at those competitors for lodging options here in Lancaster County, we've got to be able to make sure that we're selling ourselves as a lodging option. And while the village can do that on a great level from a person face-to-face interaction, we have to do that for lodging before they even arrive. They have to know what the rooms look like. They have to know what the options are. They have to make that reservation before the actual sale happens. And so the online presence for us is huge. And that was a piece of why, going back to those images, that's a big part of our story of success recently with the website. So a lot of people will say, I can sleep over, because they know the village. They know all of those different pieces that you can do while you're here. And how people used to find the inn was that sleepover tab on kitchenkettle.com. And you can still find us there, but that used to be the only way. And so we had that as an option in addition to a map. So when you came here to the village, we have a great map of the village, and it highlights those. You can see on that picture there the blue roofs, the blue buildings are lodging options. So you start to understand that there is another piece to this village experience. When people go on our website and you click on that sleepover tab, it used to take you to this site that you can see now, which has really nice images and has great links that will get you more information, but you're still within that Kitchen Kettle realm. You're still in that umbrella. And so it's easy to get distracted. You can still find places to shop. You can still find a festival that you want to go to while you're here, but you may have forgotten that you were trying to make a room reservation. And so what we did was focused all of the great marketing and all of the great photography work that Kitchen Kettle has been working on and doing well with for years, and we pulled those resources just for the inn. So in 2000 is when we opened the inn. We had 1 room, and we, like I said, expanded to 17, but that progression of the website kind of goes with that. So the next slide has a little bit more details for a timeline of how we went from that website that you see right now to where we are today. So like I said, in 2000, we opened with 1 room, and then in May we expanded, May of 2008, we expanded to 17, but the big change for us came within the last year to a year and a half. We started using Visily in January of 2016, and they really allowed us to take that image you see there, which is a great picture, good lighting. We had a professional photographer come in, but that's just an image, and if it's not used correctly, we can't sell that room as well as we'd like to. So when we started using Visily, we also bought our own domain name. And then didn't do any extra marketing. We went from keeping that sleepover tab, and when you clicked on that, it would take you to a part of the website, but we didn't put any marketing behind our new domain name of in@kitchenkettle.com. We wanted to compare the numbers. So in August of this past year, now that sleepover tab goes directly to our website. And we saw a huge jump in those numbers. We were looking at about 200 visitors per month, and that would fluctuate a little bit, but when we started combining visuals like that, our homepage now with Visly and that domain name, our numbers soared to over 4,000 visitors per month. And so really being able to use the resources that the village offers us, as well as the name and recognition that the village offers us, but the ability to sell a room, it comes from great visuals and pulling all of those things together for us. So then after those numbers have changed, we've really been able to hone in and focus our efforts. So we did that through visual design. Our booking engine integrated seamlessly. So using Visly was really helpful for us to integrate that booking engine so that, like Sarah said, it takes it step by step. We don't lose people along the way. It goes from that pretty image, and now I know even more that what my next project is going to be to make sure that clicking on those images gets you directly to that linking part, or the reservation part. The staff at Visly were really helpful and very professional and kept in touch with us to make sure that we have what we need. And it's been really easy to edit the site with their help and with just learning it along the way. So we've been able to take those images and take their suggestions and really blend them to make a site that has been successful for us and to make our guests feel welcome. We want to make that wow factor happen in all kinds of places, whether that's on your phone, whether that's on your desktop, and most of our guests are still using a desktop. From the analytics that we've seen, that's still the major place that people are making a booking for us. So we want to make sure that all audiences have their information at their fingertips in the way that it needs to be. So we appreciate those analytics as well, because that gives us a better picture of how our audience is getting the information, what they're doing with it. And the support team, when I have questions based on that, I don't know what all of these analytics exactly mean, so I can call and get that calculation. I can call for that formula and really understand what is the piece of that story that I'm missing and how can I use that better. So I appreciate what Visly does for us to make sure that the bookings from our website are happening in the progression that we want them to.
And Allison, as Sarah was talking about, the devil is in the details, right? And so when she was talking about, I think the word she used was surgically understanding what it is people are doing and when they're doing it and why they're doing it. To the extent that you understand that, then you can modify your digital presence to be more helpful, more interesting, more responsive, so that you get out of their way as they are trying to make their way to that booking engine, or you are, pushing them along to the booking engine.
Absolutely, yep. And ways that I would like to take that to the next level for us is to add some more pieces of our story and put in the history elements and put in more of what is going to make that personal for them, what's going to attract them to us as a unique place to stay, because the mission of the entire village is to deliver a fun and unique experience while shopping. So we really think that staying overnight is a way to round out that experience. You've been shopping, you've taste tested all kinds of goodies throughout the village, and so staying here under a locally made quilt and hearing the clip-clop of the horses as you're going to sleep that overnight, that's a great way to make it even more enriching for your stay.
Absolutely. And Joni from our audience has a question. She said, do you personally work with the people in your local area to feature them or to put packages together? Because it sounds like the village is pretty close-knit.
It is, yeah. We definitely reach out to other stores within the village, but we have been trying to come up with some packages that will reach us across the street to some of our other local businesses, whether that's the quilting shop across the street that offers classes. We do have a wine store here in the village, so we're coming up with a package to have a wine lovers weekend. And there's a bike shop down the street, so I'd love to be able to come up with some ideas for creating a unique offering in a package format that ties our guests to some other Lancaster County resources. And we do that with Facebook links, and we do that with some of the highlighted widgets on our homepage, but I'd like to make that even a stronger presence as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and for you guys in the audience, if you have other ideas about how you're doing it, please send them in through the questions dialog box. It's a terrific idea, right? Particularly, you know, even if you're not in a village like Allison is, where it seems like there's tons of stuff to do, you know, if you go outside the lobby of your hotel, you know, where's the coffee shop? Where's the subway stop? All of those things are important to people because they don't get in their room and lock themselves in and never leave, right? So all of that stuff is useful and helpful, and they're going to remember that as they move through the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I've just been linking a unique thing that is offered here in Lancaster County. It's called a mud sale, and our local newspaper has a full schedule of all of them happening around the area. And so tying that to our guests and what might bring them at this time of year when bookings can be a little bit lower, finding what the seasonal offerings are, that's been helpful to us as well.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, because often people go, you know, my marketing's okay because, you know, I'm mostly full, but everyone has those low seasons, or, you know, you may be fine during the week but not on the weekends, or vice versa, right? So it's finding how do you fill those gaps and get people in those rooms during the periods that are not as popular. Yeah, absolutely. Here's your next slide.
Thanks. So just finishing it up, like Sarah said, what people tell you is true, and it's really valuable to listen to them. So we appreciate all of our TripAdvisor reviews, and we are very fortunate to have some great ones. So I just leave you with some nice words from some of our guests that we are really proud to be a great and beautiful place to stay. So Bisley has helped us share that visually, and we're looking forward to what is coming next.
Well, thank you very much, Allison. I know the audience always appreciates hearing from a hotelier who understands the challenges, and you stepped up to the table, you got your arms around it, your heads around it, and you've had some terrific results, and you know, the least of which is evidenced by this terrific review that you have on TripAdvisor. Folks, keep sending in your questions. I'm just going to talk for a minute or so about Bisley that Allison just referred to. It's our digital marketing system that enables you to create, publish, update, and maintain, like you just saw from Allison, a visually stunning hotel website, mobile site. It comes with a suite of Facebook apps and digital brochures for storytelling on third-party channels as well, and it's all in one place. And it really centralizes all of your digital marketing needs into the single system. The website has been designed to be conversion driven, and it includes, it's been designed also with SEO best practices in mind. We didn't talk a ton about SEO today, but you know, there's two parts of the equation, right? One part is getting the consumer to your website, and then the other part is convincing them to book with you once they get there. So it's important that the website that you have is designed with these SEO best practices in mind. As Allison alluded to, pretty easy to use, and she doesn't have to have an expensive agency or she doesn't have long turnaround times for updates. So it's customizable. You can add your own content that really tells your story the best. The Visly subscription also comes with a storytelling specialist, someone who's going to work with you to build out your website and write content on your behalf if needed. Our storytelling specialists are creative writers, and they're well-versed on SEO best practices and, as Allison said, helping you answer questions and tell your story in a way that's going to help rank better. We have more than 4,000 hotels around the globe using Visly to manage their digital marketing. So before we take a couple more questions, I'm going to launch our final poll, which is, based on today's experience, will you attend another Leonardo webinar? And this just gives us a sense of, was the content today helpful? Is it what you expected when you signed up for the program? And it just helps us prepare for the next one and make sure that we're teeing up the content that is most important to you. So the majority of you have voted, and the majority of you have also said that yes, you will attend another webinar in the future. So great. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it. And so I'm going to close that poll. And Joe from our audience, Joseph, has a question, and Sarah and Allison, I'll tee this up to you as well. And Joe wants to know, what type of experiences do you think millennials are most interested in? I'll start off the conversation by saying I think that millennials, by and large, are interested in authentic experiences. They want something that is going to resonate uniquely with who they are, and that's why, as Sarah was talking about, understanding who the guest is and then communicating with them and telling a story in a way that is going to resonate with them will be good. The other thing I would say is that you have to understand who your guest is. If your guest is not a millennial traveler, if they're not your target audience, then no need to worry about that. So I think the most important thing you can do is understand who your target market is and then communicate with them in a way that is going to talk to them. So Sarah, Allison, any other comments on that?
Yeah, sure. I'll actually give a bit of maybe it's an odd perspective, but some of the research, I found it even more interesting. So you're dead on, Darlene. I think authenticity in the experience is certainly something they desire. It's exactly also why they go to the brand's website today and shop, even if they don't book. They're still researching, wanting to get to know you. But I find it the most interesting research is actually the opportunity for travel suppliers, both airlines and hotels, to capitalize on the way they think about the value of their time and what they're willing to sacrifice in their careers. And I don't know if I am a millennial technically. I don't know if this is why, but I do find myself feeling the same way sometimes, is that you kind of witnessed a lot of prior generations. Not that we don't work just as hard, but we witnessed them all giving up so many parts of their life and also still giving up so many other things for the sake of like a company or what have you. And so when I think about maybe the millennial business traveler from a different point of view, I think they're going to be and continue to be willing to spend more money on things and ancillaries that enhance their experience and bring it from a painful one or a slightly annoying or tiring one more so than what they need to put themselves through, and pay their way into a better experience. And that for them could mean an upgrade in a room that they may not decide on it until they're actually at the property and they're feeling exhausted. And in an airline context, that we've seen it actually in a lot of the data already, they're much more willing and freely willing to spend a corporation's money on an upgrade than prior generations, regardless of whether it was in policy or not. Even if it's in policy, prior generations often haven't spent it. Millennials have no problem doing it because they believe they're giving of themselves to a company and deserve that treatment in return, and they respect their free time as well as their health and well-being a little more, which is, I think, just a great opportunity for the travel industry to service that need and to capitalize on them keeping themselves what they perceive to be healthier. And I think that's okay. We all win.
Yeah, for sure. Allison, what's your experience with your property?
For millennials, I feel like we have the opportunity to share Lancaster County's traditions, but that may be in food, that may be in an experience when you're here, and we've got a real spectrum of what you can do. So it might be that millennials are interested in going to Lancaster City, but they know that the Amish country and more of a different side of the cultural experiences here, and Kitchen Kettle has really embraced that from a foodie side of things. And so that hook for them may be that we have an Olive Basin store, or we have a meat and cheese shop where you can see mozzarella cheese stretching. And it might be that you can go see a show at the theater that night, but you still come home to an inn that's comfortable, that makes you feel welcome, that's, like you said, that authentic experience.
Absolutely. I think you had me at mozzarella.
Me too.
Great. Well, thank you very much, ladies. You've been a gem. I know the audience has really, really enjoyed and learned a lot from your presentations today. We appreciate your time. So thank you, Sarah Kennedy Ellis, and thank you, Allison Ladley Gibson. And everyone on the line, our next webinar is on March 23rd. Don't worry, we'll send you an email. But we're going to be talking about using mobile to increase direct bookings at a lower cost. So please look for details in your inbox in the next few weeks. So thanks again, ladies. Have a good rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon.